So there's this great story, right, in one of my favorite books about a young man who, was too young to really be a warrior, right, but, too old to just be kind of sitting at home doing nothing. And there was a huge war going on between two nations. And some of you know where this is going. And these two nations had been at war for a very, very, very long time over theological ideas, right? For lack of a better way to say it, okay? And these two nations had faced off and were finally, it was all coming to a head. And this young man had two brothers that were in the war. And they were soldiers and they were right on the front lines for his country. And his dad had sent him out to take the soldiers' water and, run chores and that sort of thing for the war. But what was going on was the two nations now, rather than go to war and just kill each other and there be mass murder, where they says, listen, you send out your best soldier, we'll send out our best soldier, and we'll let the two of them work it out. So the folks on the other side, known as the Philistines, they sent out their best man. A huge man, right? An enormous man, okay? Huge. And he covered in body armor that weighed hundreds of pounds, a gigantic sword. I mean, the man, he was a man giant. Literally, a man giant. And they sent him out, and he was taunting the young man's soldiers. He was taunting them, saying, come on, come and get some, right? Well, the young man hears that this is going on, and so the king of the nation that the young man belonged to, the nation of Israel, the king said, listen, if somebody will go out there and whoop that giant so we can be done with this nonsense, they won't have to pay taxes for the rest of their life. They can ride a horse and they'll get to marry my daughter. And the young man, whose name was David, heard about this. And he got kind of excited. So when he was making his next chore, running down to the battlefront, he goes and finds a couple of soldiers. And he says, hey, what's this I hear about, no taxes and a princess? And his brothers got wind of it and says, what are you doing bothering me? Go home, fool. Go home. But the young man says, no, I'm not doing that. So he goes to the king, thinking, because the king had said, if anybody wants to take on this giant, come and see me. So David says, okay. So he goes down there thinking there's going to be like a line around the block, right? I mean, who wouldn't want to marry the princess, ride a horse, and never pay taxes, right? It's ridiculous. So David goes down there, walks in, there's nobody there. He's thinking maybe they're closed, maybe somebody already took the job, right? He walks in, sees the king, and says, I'm your man. The king goes, all right, fine, dude, go for it, right? Knock yourself out. David, little scrawny kid, a young man, barely an adolescent. So what does David do? Well, he rolls down to the battlefield and strolls out onto the battlefield and says to the giant, yo, I'm your man. And the giant looks over and thinks, you have got to be kidding. And starts taunting, this is who you send me? A boy? And David says to the giant, I'm going to cut your head off with your own sword. And the giant goes, ho, ho, ho. And while the giant's laughing, David takes out his sling, puts a rock in it, shoots a rock with it, hits the giant in the head, knocks the giant out. He falls over. David goes over, takes the sword out of the giant's sheath, whoosh, cuts his head off. Takes the head, right? And then goes back to the king and goes, hey, job done. Can I have my princess, my horse, and my no taxes now? And the young man David later went on to become King David. Now, the moral of the story in my mind, and there's 11 million morals to that story, okay? But the moral of the story for me was David. Now, whether you look at this as scripture or whether you look at it as just a great story, this isn't a theological discussion. This is simply taking the moral out of a great story. And here's the moral. David didn't ask, how big is the giant? How big is his sword? How good is he? How many people has he fought before? David didn't ask, is he going to kill me or rip my head off? David didn't ask, how fast is he? Do you know anything about him? Is he, what does he weigh? David didn't ask any of that. You see, David wasn't focused on the challenges. David wasn't focused on the little details. David wasn't focused on what might not work or what might go wrong. David wasn't focused on whether or not he would die. David was focused on what he wanted. He was focused on the goal. David's whole mindset was, I get to marry a princess? All I got to do is kill that guy? Oh, I'm in, right? See, David, His whole mindset was completely different than anybody else. And so he just rolled down there and took care of business. Off with the head and he's done, right? You see, David was focused on what he wanted. He was focused on the reward. He was focused on the end result. He was focused on the outcome. He wasn't focused on the challenges. He wasn't focused on the obstacles. He wasn't focused on the little things that could distract him or derail him. He never thought about what if it wouldn't work. He never thought about what if they're wrong. He never thought about what if I don't get the princess when it's over. He never thought about what if the king changes his mind. He never thought about any of those things. He never thought about what if the Philistines race out and kill me right after I kill the giant. He didn't think about any of the things that could go wrong or should go wrong or might go wrong, or he didn't think about any of those things. All he thought about was the outcome. And because that's how he thought, his brain allowed him to do things that all logic and reason said were impossible for any man, especially a small boy. And I would attest that you and I must be like David in the pursuit of our goals and our dreams. Listen, you could think up an alphabetical list of reasons why you can't do or shouldn't do the things that you're pursuing. You could think of a million ways that it could fail. You could think of a million ways that it wouldn't work out for you. But if you will leave all of that to the side and just focus on what you want, what the end result and the outcome will be, and let the rest of the challenges handle themselves, you will find that your victory will be both swift and decisive. And the spoils of victory will be yours. Go out and make it a great day, guys.